very sporty in here.
It's very sporty. It's very me. You know, I love my sports. But to be discussed, here we go. Rock and roll, AZ. Here we go.
Okay.
That means quiet on the set, AZ. Can I call you AZ?
Sure. At work, they used to call me Zerb. The Zerb.
The one and only Zerb.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 1646 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making her Toronto Mic debut, it's the Zerb, Antonia Zerbisias. Holy crap. I butchered that, didn't I?
Oh, no, almost.
Antonia Zerbisias.
Antonia Zerbisias.
What a pleasure it is to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
It's weird when I see you, I'm like, I've been like a square in the Toronto Star. This photo, I saw it for decades. Like, do people go up to you and say, like, oh my gosh, you're like human size because you're just a picture in the paper. There's Antonia.
Yeah, well, you know, it kind of freaks me out still that people know who I am. You know, I live just off the Danforth, and I'll be sitting there at Second Cup, you know, just watching the world go by, and strangers come up to me, go, oh, and I'm like, are you going to kill me?
Oh, they want to talk to you
Are you one of the
about
bad guys?
something you wrote about like 20 years ago. They want to call you out on it.
Well, you know, that's the other thing. They'll, you know, there's a lot of film and production people who live in the neighborhood, and they'll go, oh, you reviewed my documentary or whatever. And I'm like, oh, shit. Was it a good review? Do they hate me? And then,
Right.
Yeah. And then I find out I gave them a good review and everything's fine.
Well, you were fair at least. Now, we're going to cover all this, the Toronto Star. So much I want to talk to you about. Excited you're here. But I follow you on Blue Sky, and I saw you post a hello to Nicole Robertson.
Hello, Nicole.
How do you know Nicole?
Nico plays, well, I know Nico for a few reasons. He's played with my partner's son, Luc Doucette, Whitehorse. But I'm a fan because he plays with one of my favorite bands in this city, Thelonious Hank.
Yes.
Yes.
One of his 10 bands.
Yeah. and the Hooligoons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I know Nico. And yeah, that's how I know Nico. He's a great guitar player, and there are so many in this town that I love to go and watch and groove to.
You're a big fan of live music.
I am a big supporter and fan of live music. I have been all my life. Well, ever since I saw the Beatles in 1964.
At Maple Leaf Gardens.
I'm from Montreal. Get
The
with
Forum.
the program.
Did I say Maple Leaf Gardens? I'll fix it in post.
September 8th, 1964, in the Reds for $5. And I went with my sister and my sister's best friend, Frances, and my other sister, my late sister, Denny, who was 12 years older than us and a lawyer at the time. And my mother was very concerned that we would get hysterical and pee our pants or something.
Right.
So she put us all on Valium. So we're sitting there like...
How old are you on Valium? How old are you?
I was just 13.
Wow. That's the good old days, right?
Yeah.
We don't even think to drug our kids up like that anymore.
Yeah, and I've seen everybody. Cream, Hendrix, the Beach Boys, the Stones several times. I mean, I've seen them everybody who came through Montreal. And growing up in Montreal, being into music, we had a great blues scene, Rockhead's Paradise. Every person who toured through the northern states would stop off in Montreal, which was like a wide open, great city. My uncles used to call this town Hogtown.
Well, Hogtown was Toronto's nickname, absolutely. So when do you leave Montreal? How old are you?
How old I am? I am 74 as of last month.
Okay. The Radical Reverend was just here.
Yes, I know.
And you used to be on, is it called The Three Women? What was the name of this?
The Broad Squad. Jane Houghton's show on WTN.
Okay, this was called Three Women with Sherry DeNovo on CIUT.
You know what? Maybe. I've done so many things. Like if I were to write out everything I've done, I don't think I would remember everything.
Well, we're gonna jog that memory today. But you mentioned you're 74. I was actually asking how old you were when you left Montreal.
Oh,
in fact, you said 74. So I wasn't even gonna. How old are you now? But I know the Radical Reverend also 74. So you both look great.
I have a lot of time for Sherry. In 1974 was the first time with my first husband, and I went to work for Columbia Pictures. Here in Toronto, and then we went back in 75 and I joined CBC in Montreal, and then with my second husband we came here in 1985, and in 1991 I wanted to go back to Montreal for personal reasons, and the Star recognized that I could handle the Charlottetown referendum and sent me back to Montreal because I'm bilingual and I covered Canadian politics for the CBC while I was a reporter there. And so I spent 2 years in Montreal, and then they dragged me back here in 93. You can see the ruts on the 401 where my heels were as they pulled me away from my hometown. And I don't regret it actually now.
How was the audio at that Beatles show at the Forum? How was the audio? Do you have any memory of the audio, or you were just screaming so loud you couldn't hear it?
I was on Valium.
That's right. That's right.
No, but here's the thing. I was never one of the screamers. I was into the music. I wanted to be able to, I had binoculars and I was watching, Paul on the bass, and, that's what I wanted to see.
Because infamously, at Maple Leaf Gardens, Harold Ballard booked an extra show or something, and they did like a double header at Maple Leaf Gardens.
They did that in Montreal too.
Okay.
There was a matinee and an evening show.
And the audio, and I wasn't there, shocker there, but I talked to like Diane Sachs and some FOTMs who were there. And the audio, I guess they were using just the public address announcer audio they'd use for like hockey games or whatever.
Right.
So, you're not going to get too much dynamic range there.
I cannot comment on the audio. I honestly don't remember. It was
a while ago. Okay,
60 years ago.
I'm gonna play some audio that you will comment on. Are you ready to go back to this? You ready?
Sure. Can I blow my nose?
You blow your nose, and I'm gonna play this audio.
Okay.
Our guest, Edgar Bergen. Our host, Larry Solway.
Oh my God! How did you dig that up?
To go to the movies, or to play cards, or to lie in bed with a good book. It was for tens of millions the night for Jack Benny and Fred Allen, and the biggest of them all, where you got all in one package: the music of Ray Noble, the voice of Nelson Eddy, the ribald wit of W.C. Fields, the brassy-voiced boy Charlie McCarthy. Together, they almost have sold billions of gallons of Chase and Sanborn coffee. It all came from the quietest one of them all, Edgar Bergen. In the 20 years of weekly shows, no one ever played for a bigger audience than Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snurd, and it began at least 50 years ago.
Well, I guess so. Charlie did, certainly. The radio started at 37 years. But the beginning, well, Charlie started with high school, and I was fooling with ventriloquism when I was in the 8th grade in Decatur, Michigan. Then high school is where, my senior year, I got Charlie McCarthy.
You passed out of high school.
What are we listening to here?
I think we're listening to the Larry Solway show, which I worked on that's the reason we came to to Toronto in 1974, because I got a job at the Larry Solway show as a researcher and booker. And yeah.
So what's it like to hear that audio?
It makes me feel old.
Oh no.
And I don't often feel old.
No, I don't mean to make you feel old.
No, that's okay. It was a difficult time. Moving from Montreal to Toronto in '74 was really a culture shock. And doing that show, as interesting as it was, and I met so many people, like so many incredible people, and I remember some of them very well. Good and bad. Doing that show was very hard because we had to travel a lot, and you'd book into a hotel, and it would be very intense for like 3 weeks or a month. I spent, like, for example, a month in London, England, and I only had one free day. It was running around and, booking this, booking that, pre-interviewing, writing the questions, and then there would be like these marathon studio taping sessions that would go on for like 12 hours. And I would, escort the guests into the green room and makeup, and then keep them company, make sure they were happy, and then escort them into the studio. It was hard. And then I would come home, which was not home. It was like an apartment in Toronto. And I mean, I had my husband there, but it was difficult.
And you loved Montreal.
I love Montreal. Taxi drivers, when I used to take the taxis to the airport or whatever in Montreal to come back here, they would ask me, which city do you like better? And I would say, well, Toronto's like my husband. Montreal's my lover.
Woo! Never shall the two meet.
No. I'm not sorry I'm here now. So don't get me wrong, but I do miss it.
Okay, well, so you went back to Montreal, then you came back to Toronto.
In 85, because my then husband, Mark Blanford, the late Mark Blanford, he was the first person to do a television series in high definition. He did that for the CBC in cooperation with Sony, which was trying to promote high-definition TV, sure. HD TV as we called it back then, or High D actually we called it back then. And so I got a job on CBC's business show then, which was moving to Sunday night prime time after the National.
And that's Venture, right?
Venture. So I co-hosted with Patrick Watson and produced and fronted my own documentaries. And I did that for a year. But you know what? I mean, I got a master's in business administration in the early 80s, at night mostly, and did very well. And I thought I wanted to do business reporting, but oh my God, it's so boring. So, especially for TV.
Well, Antonia, yes. Is that correct? Antonia?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Greek. It's all Greek to me. Okay.
It's actually a Latin name, but yes.
Antonia, okay.
Yes.
Love it. Now, before I get you to the Star and we spend some time at the Toronto Star, and that's when I'm introduced to you, who you are. I'd see your photo as I'd read your piece in the Toronto Star. Do you think we could chat just a little bit, because you're so sharp and you have such interesting opinions on this world at large? Could I ask you a little bit about current events?
Sure. I just concerned that we might date this show by talking about what's going on today that might change, like in the next 10 minutes, the way Trump is going.
So all we do is we timestamp it. So we're talking at 2:21 p.m. on Friday, March 7, 2025. So if news breaks at, 4 p.m. today, we didn't know about it. So we're talking about what we know now.
Yeah.
But if Donald Trump were listening to us right now, what would you say to Donald Trump?
Get help. Get help. The man, there's something wrong with the guy.
You think so?
He has absolutely no empathy for anybody. And anybody who does not have empathy does not fit into civilization. We would not have civilization unless we all got along and cooperated with one another. He doesn't get it.
No compassion for those he shares his planet with. He seems to be all about Donald Trump, and he doesn't care who dies or who gets hurt in the process.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose people, but he's a sociopath. Like, seriously, I really believe that. He's probably bipolar as well, and not medicated.
Have you seen the movie, the biopic, The Apprentice? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I did watch it. Yes, well, that was basically more about the lawyer.
Ray
I was going to
Cohn.
say Roy McCarthy. No, thank you, Roy Cohn. Incredible performance by Jeremy Strong, by
Yes.
the way. Yes, I did see that, but there was really nothing new to me in there. I read a lot.
So it's one thing if we both agree that this is likely a sociopath, but how does a person like that gain such a loyal following? Like, how did we arrive at a point where he has this power? Like, this is a perfect storm. I wouldn't even, if this was a dystopian future novel or something I was reading 30 years ago, I wouldn't believe it that this person could ever assume such a position where he could have such a influence over the world.
First of all, he is really good at television. He had a lot of practice at that. So I watched the. I hope we don't date this too much.
No,
but I
but
watched
this
the
is Toronto. Mike, date the hell out of it. Like,
Okay,
it's this
all right.
moment now we're talking.
All right. Well, I watched the speech on Tuesday night that he gave to the joint session of Congress, and I mean, he made no sense. He lied every 3 seconds. He kept saying, it's going to be the most incredible, so incredible, incredible. You won't believe how incredible. The guy's vocabulary is extremely limited and getting more limited by the second, which is a sign of a problem. But he does know how to work the camera. And he's entertaining in the sense that it's like watching a constant car crash, right? It's like bam, 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 one after the other. So, what happens when we see car crashes? We slow down, Now, in terms of why so many people buy into it, there are a lot of angry men especially. There's a huge backlash against feminism. So I think that's part of it. I watched this series on CNN recently that it wasn't on CNN. It was a CNN series that's being replayed on Amazon and YouTube. You can find it online. And it was the soundtracks of our life, like basically baby boomer lives. And they were taking certain news events like Hurricane Katrina or the Vietnam War or whatever, and, focusing on the news, but also the music of the time. And they kept saying, well, America was divided then. When has America not been divided? I mean, look at the Civil War. Like 1 million soldiers were killed in the Civil War.
Bloodiest war in American history.
I mean, it's divided along race, along gender, along class, so many ways. Red versus blue, East versus, the middle. It's crazy.
Transgender mice. I believe this was from the not State of the Union that was like cosplaying as a State of the Union, but he talked about saving money. They were going to transgender mice, and it turns out it was transgenic.
That's right. I mean, that's how. I don't know if that was deliberate or not.
That's my question. I had this conversation with my wife. I said, does he know his followers are dumb, so he's serving up the slop for them, or is he so dumb he believes that this was X million dollars going towards making mice transgender?
You know what? I think he has a very short attention span, and somebody must have said transgenic mice to him, or he basically read some briefing note and saw transgenic, and in his mind he heard transgender. I don't think, because either he deliberately lied or he's I'm not going to call him an idiot because I don't think he's an idiot, but he is losing his mind, and. No, the sad fact is that the media made him, like back in the 80s, Vanity Fair was all over him. I don't know if people remember National Lampoon. National Lampoon was the only magazine or news thing it was a satirical thing, to take him down. But everybody else was like, oh, Donald Trump. I mean, he made 2 appearances on Sex and the City, with Samantha drooling over him.
Right. Art of the Deal and a big deal.
Oh, yeah. And so they created him because he's clickbait. He's good ratings. But now I think they're wising up. I mean, I even saw stuff on Fox this week, freaking out over the stock market. Right. It was great.
So let me ask you about, Donald Trump, we've talked about him, but this 51st state rhetoric that we've been inundated with for the past several weeks. What are your thoughts on that, Antonia?
I'm afraid he really means it. I don't think he'll succeed, but I think he really means it. And I have been afraid of this all my adult life because I've always recognized the strength of Canada, in terms of resources. I mean, I didn't know about these fancy new minerals, right? But I knew about water and I knew about timber and gold and all that stuff. It only makes sense, that they, especially now with the South suffering from climate change, like we're starting to look good and not so polar to them,
It's so insulting, the Governor Trudeau talk and the fact that, you mentioned that he's got a short attention span, but he's not letting this go, right? There's something here.
I think it's personal. I think
Trump's too good looking. Trump. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Trudeau's too good looking.
No, I think he's even taller than Trump, and Trump likes to pretend he's tall. Although he wears lifts, from what I understand.
And diapers, I heard.
Well, yeah, I remember that shot of him in the shorts, the back shot. It was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe he sat in a mud pile. I don't know.
Well, there's an FOTM named Noel Kassler who worked on The Apprentice, and he talks about. Yeah, it was. He smells like a guy wearing a diaper. He wears a diaper, and there's no judgment to anyone who wears a diaper here. But he's got an Adderall addiction. It's quite the.
Well, I don't know about that. But here's the guy who eats nothing but like Big Macs and French fries. So he's got to be making smelly things. I don't know if it's in a diaper or just generally, he who smelt it, he who dealt it.
Oh my God, are you? I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for Antonia. You'll speak for Antonia.
Okay.
I wake up every morning and hope I'm going to go online and read his obituary.
Here's the thing, though. Vance. Yeah.
But I don't care. I know, yes, of course. I
think Vance is worse. I think Vance is worse. He's a puppet of Peter Thiel, this tech billionaire who created him. He's a religious fanatic. Trump is not religious. Trump just pretends to be God's vessel on earth, right. But I don't think he's ever really darkened the doorstep of a church unless he's had to. No. Whereas I'm always concerned about white Christianity now and the way it's being used to attract certain voters. He frightens me, Vance. I mean, and here's a guy who cannot stick to his own principles. He called Trump Hitler a few years ago, and now he's like right up his butt with all the other idiots.
Ganging up on Zelensky in the Oval Office.
That was so tacky, But, it's all a performance, right? But I think they crossed a line there, not just internationally within, the diplomatic and the political circles, but I think, there are a lot of people with Ukrainian backgrounds in the United States, and in Canada, but it doesn't matter about Canada, who would have been grossly offended by that.
Well, any human being, I think, on this planet would be grossly offended by that.
Well, the man is a gross offense. I mean, there's nothing else to say about him. I can't imagine what it's like to be Melania.
Well, there must be a deal in place, right? Without it, there's some agreement.
I'm sorry, but there's not enough money in the world for me to do what I figure she's doing for him.
What if, because I was trying to understand this too, because she was at that not State of the Union address that took place the other night. And I was wondering, because I often thought of this with Alexander Ovechkin when he had this social media photo of him and Putin that he just simply left there when Putin invaded Ukraine. And I wonder if there is a legitimate fear for her family's lives. Like if perhaps there's some deal in place where if she doesn't because I don't know anything. I'm just speculating with my new friend FOTM Antonia. But well, if there was some threat to her parents, for example, deportation.
But they're in the United States.
But deportation or something worse, obviously, that perhaps she would toe the line for X dollars until he dies.
Well, there were the rumors that his first wife, Ivana, was a Russian spy or Soviet spy. I don't know about Melania. It could be. You could be right. There's no question that the Ukraine, while it's the one being invaded with, and being bombed and people are being killed, there's other things going on in Eastern Europe, for example, in Romania, that they just had this quote unquote election with some Russian-backed politician assuming control of the country, and it's scary, what's going on with Russia. I worry that Russia wants us more than the United States, because then they can control the top of the world, and they're all over the Arctic. They've got more nuclear, ice-breaking, submarine whatevers up there than the Americans and Canadians do put together.
So you have a couple of years on me. You made an allusion earlier that you were always afraid of this. I know when I was growing up, they often said, the next world war will be fought over drinking water. Like this was the thing we often talked about. Like, so did you ever think, though, we'd be having this conversation in 2025 where we're both legitimately worried that perhaps, I don't know, will Trump call in the military to annex at least part of Canada? Like, I don't trust him not to.
Okay, well, there's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
So let's just start with the water. I started writing about this while I was still at the Star, and I can't remember the name of the book now, I'm sorry, but it was all about when the Colorado River dries up. And as we know, it's drying up. There's a real problem through the south, the Southwest, California and Arizona and Colorado. That they're going to come after us. And I used to joke that if I ever win, the big lotto, like $50 million, I would buy all the real estate I could buy in Buffalo because it would be on the right side of the lake at that point. So I've always been worried about that. Did I think that we would come to this point? Absolutely. And that's why in 1969, when I read a book called The Population Bomb, I said to my mother, I'm not having children. And she went, what do you mean? You're going to be selfish, grandchildren. And I'm like, no, not having children. I do not want to bring children into a future where they're going to be suffering. And you know what? I hate to say it, but I think it's going to come. Maybe not this year, maybe not this decade, but it's coming.
That's fascinating. So you made a conscious decision. I'm not bringing any more human beings into this world.
That's right. I mean, I didn't know about climate change at the time. It was, too many people, not enough food. A lot of that problem has been solved with, modern agricultural techniques and factory farming and all that, which is problematic in its own sense. But I did make a conscious decision. And if I may bring this up, it became a problem for me in the early 70s after I graduated with my BA that, I was looking for a job. And back then, in those days, you put your birthday and your marital status, on your CV. And, I would sit there in front of male interviewers. Like I can remember one, it was a startup advertising agency with two guys, like these two renegade ad guys, and they became extremely successful, and I had applied for a job as a copywriter here in Toronto. And they looked at my resume and they went, "Oh, you're married." And I went, this was 1974. "Oh, you're married." And I went, 1975. "Yes," I said, "I got married last month, as a matter of fact." And they went, "And when do you plan to have children?" And I'm like, "I'm not having kids." "Oh, of course you are. Every woman wants kids." Right. And I went, "I don't." Like, the first time I held a baby by myself was last year with my grandniece.
Really?
Yeah, like, I don't know what to do with babies.
Yeah.
And my brother left his daughters when they were young with me for a weekend, and the two-year-old was still in diapers, and I'm like, oh, shit, I got to change a diaper. And the 5-year-old was like saying, "No, you're doing it wrong."
Oh, wow.
It's like, do it like that. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I give them to me when they can talk and go to the bathroom.
Wow. Okay, so that's fascinating to me. That conversation. So where are we? Back to just to wrap up the current event part. I had an episode this morning with the morning show host for Zoomer Radio.
Uh-huh.
And the vibe there, it was a great episode if you care anything about Toronto radio. So that's for like...
Well, I do.
Well, then you and I will love it. So it's a great episode for that. But I chose to like keep any current event stuff. But really, like it's such a big part of my day to day right now. I'm like, Antonia is somebody I can talk to about this.
Oh, sure.
So that's why I'm unloading on you right now here. But
Shoot.
And then some news today about the Great Lakes Treaty and annexing the Great Lakes, America annexing the Great Lakes.
Right. Well, I didn't have much time to
this is fresh.
Because I'm a night person and a late sleeper, and I had to put my makeup on to get here.
All right, you're off the hook for that one. But bottom line is, it's
But
every day something new.
I did post a story on my Facebook profile from the New York Times with some like sort of like, you know, deep sources on the conversations between Trump and Trudeau, and you know, and how I remember this in particular, how Trump was talking about abandoning, that was the word the New York Times used, abandoning all the Great Lakes water treaties and such. Well, I don't know how easily that's done. I'm not concerned about an invasion, and here's why. I don't believe that Americans, like the cannon fodder is there like it used to be, serving their country to attack Canada. I don't think that there's that kind of animosity against Canada, especially along the northern border states. Like, I can't imagine somebody from New York or Vermont or Minnesota or even from Michigan feeling, I'm going to go out there and kill some Canucks, you know, like they used to say about the Vietnamese. I don't see that. You know, and also, you know, a lot of them are like too much processed food and they're all diabetic. You know, never mind Mr. Bone Spurs, you know, the president, like these guys are really out of shape.
Geez, Mr. Bone Spurs, and you mentioned he eats, you know, his Big Mac combo every day or whatever. He's pushing 80, so he's on the clock, right? I mean, those types don't
I'm
live.
74, shut up.
No, but do you live on Big Mac combos?
Very rarely. Very rarely.
That's a big difference here. My goodness gracious. Okay, no, you look great. You're going to live to be 110.
No, I hope so.
You're going to live to be in good Peter shape. Gross's mom is my new hero. Marilyn Gross, Peter Gross's mother, lives on her own, cooks for the family at special occasions, completely independent, still full of vigor and energy, and she's 101 years old.
Wow. Well, you know what? After I broke my neck and back, I mean, I was always I had times when I gained a lot of weight. I mean, I grew up in delicatessens. Food is like family.
Schwartz's?
No, but I was at a private dinner, closed, with tablecloths and champagne, just for me at Schwartz's in 1978. I have photographs.
Wow.
Yes.
How did that come to be? Then
because the owner of of Schwartz's at the time was a Montreal composer and conductor named Maurice Brieger, Zbriger, if you want to Google him. And I had to interview him because he was giving free concerts in Parc La Fontaine, and he kind of got a crush on me, this old guy.
Who could blame him?
Anyway, he wrote a symphony for me. I have the score for it framed in my office, and they performed it. And then afterwards, we had a private party at Schwartz's, which he closed down. And yeah, we had champagne and smoked meat and rib steaks.
You've lived a life. That's why you're here today. We're capturing as much of it. But and now I just remembered. So again, work with me here. But I'll come back to all this other stuff. But
I need a hit of Kleenex. Hang on.
You hit the Kleenex, and I'll just say that you told me before we press record that you had heard Mike Stafford's recent visit, which was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Mike Stafford, I don't know if you heard, because he's been over here 3 times since he was fired from his gig at 640. And I felt this was the happiest. Actually, this most recent episode a couple of weeks ago was the best version of Stafford I've met since he was fired. This is my observation.
Okay, I've never met Mike. I have only listened to him on the radio back in the day. But I felt very bad for him because he seemed so, limited by his injury. Mm-hmm. You know, I should have been paralyzed from, the boobage down. Mm-hmm. And I took a long time to recover, and I just made my mind up that this was not going to put me in a wheelchair or limit me in any way. And when COVID happened, I built a gym in my den, and I started with the weights.
I need to know what happened. So that was my next sentence, was to point out that Michael Stafford broke his neck.
Yeah.
But he already has a disease, which I forget the name. It's a very complicated medical name, but it basically, his spine is fusing together. So he walks very hunched over with a cane before he broke his neck.
Oh,
okay?
I did not know that.
So he has this already. He had mobility issues with his spine disease he has. And then he broke his neck. And now I want to hear how did you break your neck?
You know, I've worn high heels all my life, and everybody would say, look at me and go, you're going to break your neck in those shoes. And I would go, no, I'm not. And then I was wearing Birkenstocks and slipped.
Oh, and Birkenstocks.
Birkenstocks, and I slipped, and I went bam like this. Like, it's lucky I hit from my forehead, because that's the hardest part of your skull, and slipped, went flying into a concrete wall, and did this. And I broke 4 ribs, crushed 4 vertebrae in my upper back, and 4 in my neck. I lost 4 inches of height overnight. Like, I used to be 5'6", and then I was 5'2".
And now you can fit in the basement.
That's
if you were
right.
5'6", you would have hit your head. Okay, thank goodness.
And wear heels,
But this
right?
sounds extremely painful.
You know what? I didn't lose consciousness, I don't think. Thank God. I don't think I had a concussion, amazingly, because I know a lot about head injuries and the damage they do, long-lasting damage. So I think I'm fine. I think. I was able to catch my breath, although with great difficulty, get
Your
up.
ribs are broken, yeah.
Yeah, get up, go to the phone, call the concierge, call me an ambulance, call one of my neighbors, come up and get me, because she had a key to my place, go to the hospital. And the hospital was like a horrible experience. I was there for 5 weeks, and the things I could write about how they treat women who fall. You know, I was 60-something, I don't know. I was in my late 60s, and they write you off, because they know that if you're not young, you're not worth saving. Like, it's...
What?
Oh, yeah. There were 3... I shared the room with 2 homeless guys, which I learned a lot about homelessness, which really woke me up. I thought I knew about homelessness, but I learned a lot more. And in the next bed, there were a series of women my age, overweight, out of shape, and they just packed them off and sent them home. And I'm like, you're not sending me anywhere until I'm ready to go. You know, I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. How am I supposed to, you know, I couldn't, for 6 months, I couldn't hang up a coat because I couldn't do this. I couldn't make a salad. I couldn't even type. So I just watched TV for 6 months, you know, and I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. And you're going to send me home? No. I'm very, very privileged, Mike, I have to say. I am very privileged, and I'm very grateful. I was able to have private care for 4 hours a day, come in, help me bathe, because I was like in a brace like this, and make my food and stuff like that, because otherwise I could not have survived.
But here you are. You walk down my stairs. You're up and about.
I'm wearing
you can
heels.
do this now. You know what I mean? I was afraid to look. I was assuming that, you can't wear Birkenstocks again. That's for sure.
No,
Jeez.
no, I hate them.
It's deadly Birkenstocks. But firstly, I get that sounds. I'm sorry that happened to you. Were you on really good painkillers? Like, I separated my shoulder. They put me on Percocets, and they were too good.
Percocets hurt my stomach, so I was on Dilaudid, which is morphine, and I don't get. Like, I smoke pot. I'll admit it. I've been smoking pot.
It's legal now.
Yeah,
You don't have to hide
since
it anymore.
1966, I've been smoking. I used to do TV. Like, I used to do, like, live hits on TV, and I would be like, Visine, is my mascara okay? Hi there. This is Antonia Zerbisias, CBC TV, Montreal.
Wow. That's the real talk right there. My goodness. Okay, so
the
Dilaudid,
yeah. So
right.
it was morphine, right? I just didn't get it, and I used to joke to my doctor, you know what? Just give me more pills, and then I'm going to take them downtown and sell them for $10 a pop.
Oh, geez. Okay, but you did so yes, you have some privilege there that you're able to get.
Yes.
What did you learn, by the way, about the unhoused? Like, there's a lot of chatter in this neighborhood right now. I did a full episode about it with the guy who's responsible for communicating to the community about it. But there's going to be a shelter in this neighborhood for the unhoused. But what did you learn from these two guys?
Right, I forget we're calling it unhoused. I apologize for that. Well,
you're forgiven.
Okay, one of them was a chef, a baker. Actually, he worked for what was the name of the one that made the only decent rye bread in Toronto? It's closed down now. But anyway, he worked for a big bakery,
okay.
And you know, people get fat for a lot of reasons, you know, and some of it is genetic. I truly believe that you cannot help it. I read this book, The Secret Life of Fat, and it was an eye-opener. But anyway, I don't want to digress. He had become enormous, so enormous that he couldn't really walk.
Yeah, no mobility.
Yeah,
issues.
so when they, you know, and so, you know, he got this terrible infection because he had these folds of, I hate to say it, but it was kind of gross because he would lie there with his gown open and everything exposed and red and gooey. And, you know, my girlfriends would come in and be like, no, you know, but he couldn't help it. Like, he was a good guy. He just couldn't help it. And, you know, he would complain about the food in the hospital, which I don't blame him. And then he would manage to somehow go downstairs where there was like a Tim Hortons and a Subway and all the usual things, and, you know, buy like 5 donuts and eat them, you know. And then they would come in and they would have to weigh him in a special thing. Right. And how come you're gaining weight? And he would just say, I don't know. But he could not work. He could not function, and I don't believe it was just because he was eating 5 donuts. There was something else happening with him. So there are all kinds of reasons. And then the other guy, he had a head injury, and he would not do much except yell, fisherman's platter and buckwheat pancakes every time the other guys started talking about food. And that's all that ever came out of his mouth. And it's not his fault, you know, that he had a head injury.
Right.
It's not his fault. So, you know, people blame, you know, oh, get a job.
Yeah, they say you're lazy.
No, you're lazy, or, you know, get a job. I don't buy that. I've known people who were homeless because their parents kicked them out because they were gay, you know, like kids on the street, right. That kind of thing. It's just like people need to have more empathy. You know, did you see the back of my jacket?
No, I didn't see it.
Can you
let's
see
see
it?
here. Yeah, there's a love and there's a peace symbol as
that's right. I mean, that's what
peace
I believe.
and love. Well, you heard in the Stafford episode, Mike Stafford, and I truly believe that if Mike Stafford didn't have the help of his sister, who is taking him into her apartment,
right?
So Mike Stafford lives with his sister in Toronto, and without that support, does Stafford have a home?
Exactly. Like, he's lucky he has a sister who cares for him, right?
Right.
A lot of people don't have family at all.
Right.
And especially, you know, boomer women. You know, a lot of us chose not to be married or have children, and we're alone. And, you know, and now a lot of them are landing on the streets because things have gotten so expensive. So you can't, and then there's, of course, you know, the indigenous people. I never knew about the 60s scoop. I don't know if you want me to explain that or not, because it wasn't something in Quebec. It was an Ontario thing, and I only learned about it when I started covering it, you know, the plight of...
Well, for those who don't know, I, of course, know everything. You know that. But for those who don't know, just summarize it, because this came to light recently with the Buffy St. Marie documentary.
Well, actually, it came to light when we started advocating for
but more
murdered
recently.
and missing, and, you know...
I didn't say it first came to light.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Very defensive there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm kind of bossy.
Okay,
yeah. So, in the 60s, they were just literally taking kids, from reservations and families and placing them in white homes in Mississauga. Well, it wasn't Mississauga back then, but you know what I mean. And totally uprooting these kids, and it screwed them up. Well, not all of them, but it screwed a lot of them up.
Sure.
And I learned about it when 3 women died mysteriously in Toronto here in, I think it was around 2010 when I did that, and one on railroad tracks in Rosedale. One came out of one of those high rises down by the Gardiner Expressway, and another one a high rise at Shepherd and Yonge. And like, why were these girls falling out of balconies when there were parties inside? And I that's when I learned about it. But how did we get here? So there's a lot of problems because of that, and alcohol, and if you can't have clean water, if you can't have jobs, if you live in remote areas where it's hard to make a living, if at all possible, how are you going to function in a society like this? Did I move?
You're drifting there, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's
you're
okay.
great where
I
you're
crossed
getting
my legs.
You know what? You're getting comfortable, which is the whole goal here. I get you comfy, and then I'm bam. There you go. You get hit. Can I ask your opinion? Because this is kind of recent news, but I think the Polaris Music Prize and the Junos, I want to say. I hope I don't get my groups wrong. And more recently, the Order of Canada have taken prizes awarded to Buffy Sainte-Marie away from Buffy Sainte-Marie. And Buffy, I wondered, what's your thoughts on the CBC documentary about her being a pretendian and these decisions to take away her Order of Canada and Polaris Music Prize, etc.?
I'm going to say I have no opinion, and I didn't watch the documentary, and I didn't get like the big fuss over it. I feel bad. I had admiration for Buffy Sainte-Marie back in the late 60s, especially when her music was really all over the place, when folk music was big. I'm not a big fan of folk music, by the way. And I feel that if you give somebody a prize for what they've done and not who or how they were born, and that's all I have to say on the matter. Okay,
fair enough. Except you're such a well-read person who's consuming so much news and information programs. I'm mildly shocked. I'm mildly shocked you skipped this very...
Don't be shocked.
I'm mildly shocked.
Don't be shocked, and here's why.
Yeah.
When I stopped working, I turned off the television.
Oh.
Okay? I stopped watching the news. I killed my subscriptions to MSNBC and Fox. Mm-hmm. When I was recovering from my broken neck, I did renew them because I had nothing else to do and I couldn't do anything else. So I watched. That was great. That was the whole Brett Kavanaugh, Supreme Court thing. So that was fun. But then I stopped. I watched the Biden inauguration, the elections live. And I didn't really watch any TV news until this week when I was laid out by this cold. I prefer to read online. I subscribe to, if you follow my Facebook profile, you see I subscribe to everything.
Right.
Everything. And even Frank magazine. And I try to share all that with people. But I stopped watching news because I couldn't stand the gatekeeping anymore. There's too much corporate concentration. They've lost the plot as far as I'm concerned on television. It's all about, they're desperate because they're losing the audience. But I'm much more disturbed really by, like I have a lot of 40-year-old women in my life for various reasons. And, they have no clue what's going on. Like none. Like when I say tariffs to them, they look at me, what?
And they're here. They're Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
That's shocking.
Yeah, business women, like women with their own businesses, who look at me and go, "Oh, what's a tariff? What? And I go, like, you don't know what's going on? No.
Like I could see Americans being clueless to this tariff talk, but the Canadians you'd think would be pretty dialed in on this.
You know what?
We're at war.
I don't get Instagram. I mean, I'm on it. I've been on it since day one, but I don't post much.
Right?
And I certainly don't get stories. Like, what is the point?
Oh no, I don't even check them. I don't post.
Like,
I don't
what
get them
is the
either.
point? They just, like...
They disappear into the abyss.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was the
what's
point of that?
So you're trying to post, like, for example, my man's daughter, she posts a lot of political stuff on stories. And I go, like, what? Can we not engage somewhere? Can we not, like,
See,
it just
but on
flashed
Instagram,
by-
which I post...
Sorry, I hit your
it's okay.
box.
I will... Well, that box is going to have something in it for you, and I'm going to tell you about that in a moment. But, Antonia, when you post on Instagram, which I'll post a photo of us by the tree and say, hey, there's an episode with Antonia, the Zerb, you're going to love this.
I will
Zerb.
do that. I will post that.
That will be like, I guess what I would call this would be like a link you could go to in 5 years, theoretically, and see
Exactly.
it. But these things that disappear in a short period of time, whatever... Please, like, what's the point of you're not archiving anything?
Yeah, my niece, one of my nieces, she posts pictures that on vacation and stuff like that, and I get that. You flash them, and you don't really want a permanent record of them, especially when they involve their kids.
Okay, sure.
That I get, but I don't get putting political messages, and like, no, I don't get that. Nail it somewhere.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. I just want to clarify something really quickly about the Buffy thing, just because, just real quickly, because you mentioned it doesn't matter where you're born. But I will say the Polaris Prize and the Junos were earmarked for Canadians, and it has been confirmed by Buffy herself that she's not Canadian.
Oh, well, I didn't even know that. Well, there you go.
So
I
those
take
are
it
like
all
a black and white. You're not Canadian. We're taking back the awards. Okay.
I
But
take it
the
back.
Order of Canada... Believe it or not, the Order of Canada you don't have to be Canadian to get the Order of Canada. You just have to be like a benefit to Canadians. I don't have the terminology.
No.
Let's hear
it. And I will tell you why.
Tell me.
I'll tell you why. Sid Edelman. Does the name mean anything to you? He was a columnist, like the most prominent entertainment columnist at the Toronto Star.
Yes.
He was Canadian editor of Variety, which is how I met him when I was in Montreal and doing my MBA. He hired me to cover the film and television industry in Montreal. And then when I moved to Toronto, after Venture, he hired me to be... He got me my job at the Star because he was entertainment editor at the Star, and he wrote a column, He did more for Canadian culture, like movies and television, and, everything, theater, everything, but especially movies and television, than anybody in this country in building up this industry. And when he retired, I tried to get him an Order of Canada, and you need to have recommendations from other Order of Canada winners. And a couple of people, a couple of dancers, and they were willing to go along with it. But when I called the people who became multi-millionaires, I won't name names, but, famous producers, for example, they all said no. And I thought, this is the Order of Canada? I don't care about it. It's bullshit.
It is bullshit. But, and this was never, so Mary Simon, the Governor General, who rescinded the Order of Canada from Buffy St. Marie, didn't give a reason. They just said there was no reason published. But I will just tell the people who need to hear this that it was not because she's American, because Americans can actually win the Order of Canada, but it is most definitely because she is a pretendian. I've had Indigenous people over here. The eyes are rolling. So you didn't see the doc, but you must have read about the doc.
Oh God, I couldn't get away from it.
But this is a woman who basically pretended to be Indigenous and was celebrated as such and took a lot of oxygen from actual Indigenous people over the decades. And much like you, I had nothing but mad respect for this woman. Love this woman. But the reason you would take away her Order of Canada would have nothing to do with the fact she was born in the United States of America.
That's
and never
why she
got
was
Canadian
like
citizenship.
Connecticut or Rhode Island or something.
Yeah,
Now I remember,
somewhere there, right. But she didn't, she talked about being adopted into Cree, and that's wonderful, except that happened in her 20s.
Right.
Right. She's been, so she's an American woman, American Italian descent, Beverly is her name, who then pretended to be Indigenous and did a great deal of effort to con us. And this documentary you haven't seen gave overwhelming evidence that she is not Indigenous. She's a pretendian.
Okay.
So that's why the Order of Canada was taken away.
Right. Well, I mean, she was a fake person, right?
Right.
But I'm gonna. I wonder how much you said she took a lot of oxygen away from real
Actual indigenous people.
Yeah, real indigenous people. I don't know how we measure that. I don't know that.
You can't measure it, but whenever somebody like the CBC needed to talk to an indigenous person, going to Buffy is the path of least resistance because she's the most famous person to represent the indigenous people.
Whenever the CBC wants to talk to a conservative pundit, they call Andrew Coyne. There's still a little Rolodex like this thick. Okay. We need a conservative. Let's call
Or if Cross Canada wants to talk to somebody, a Canadian who's interested in becoming the 51st state, well, Kevin O'Leary is your guy.
Oh, yeah. So it's just lazy journalism as far as I'm concerned. I work there. I know.
Listen, that's why you're here, But, okay, so you just gave us a little taste of how you ended up at the Toronto Star.
That's right.
So I want to this is where I would read your work. And I have some questions, obviously, but maybe share a little bit about highlights of your time as a columnist at the Toronto Star and all the different work you were doing at the Toronto Star, because you get there in '89. Is that right?
Yeah, it started in January of '89. Correct.
Okay.
And then in my very, very, very first week, Sid asked me to do a story on who might be the next president of the United States. Of CBC.
Bill Clinton.
Of CBC. Yeah, it was George Bush then, the original.
Well, the next one.
Yeah, Dad. Who would be the next president of CBC? Because I knew CBC really well.
Right.
And, I knew television really well. Can I just open a bracket here? A lot of people thought I got all my information from my ex-husband, who was also at CBC, and he knew nothing. I had so many friends at CBC who also went on to Global. And I used to live with the producer of news at Global TV here in Toronto. He was a roommate, not that kind of live guy.
Okay.
But I knew everybody, so I had my own sources. So anyway, so speculate on who would be the next whatever. So I don't remember. I did Big Saturday Front. It was my big first Saturday front. And entertainment front, and Monday morning I walk into the Star, and there was like a staff bulletin board, and I see my name in a headline and Barbara Emil's photograph, and it was her column in which she just crapped all over me, and I don't know what that CBC should be abolished, and who is this woman saying that so-and-so and so-and-so, I don't remember who I named, maybe Patrick Watson, maybe Pierre Junot, I don't remember. But anyway, so totally crapping all over me, and I was like, it was like I was never used to being crapped on by people I didn't know before.
Right.
And I go sit at my desk, and I'm like, and the next thing I know, I don't know if you remember him, his name was Frank Orr.
Yes,
he was
absolutely.
a giant. The man was 8 feet tall. And he's looming over my desk, and he goes, "You have been pissed on from a very low height. Don't feel bad. Congratulations."
Kudos.
Yeah, so, the highlights, there were many. When I won a national newspaper award for
96.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
See, you did your homework on me, but I did my homework on you.
Yes. I was going through a very hard time at the time because I was writing about media, and there was a managing editor who I couldn't stand and shall remain nameless.
All the good names.
He knows I hated him. Who was always trying to get me to do stuff that had nothing to do with my job, but was more about finding intelligence for his own gossipy or whatever purposes. And I would just say to him, "You're not going to run this story, so I'm not going to burn my sources and call them up." So it was a constant battle, and he was trying to get me fired. He had talked to my entertainment editor. God bless you, John Ferry. I still love you. John is now head of current affairs or VP of current affairs at TVO. He was a very big supporter of mine. This guy was trying to fire me. So then comes the National Newspaper Awards, and I get the award for critical writing. And I'm standing on the stage and I thank so-and-so, John Hondrick, and yada, yada. And then I go, and thanks to blah, 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 for not firing me. And that was just like me being just like,
good for you.
You know me, right? At the dinner afterwards at the Royal York Hotel, we were all sitting, a bunch of star people, and he went around congratulating. We won a record number, I think, that year, 13 awards. And he went and congratulated me. And then he leaned in to me like this, and he went, "We haven't fired you so far." And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for that. A month later, I'm in Banff covering the television festival in the bridal suite at the Banff. I loved that. I loved that. The Star was fantastic when there was money. And I get a phone call from my editor who says to me, "Guess who just got fired?" And I literally broke the bed in the Banff Hotel, jumping up and down in the bridal suite. It was a king-size bed, but I didn't care.
Karma's a bitch, is what they say.
Yeah, karma's a bitch.
Wow.
Well, I mean, you know, I can tell you stories about people I've met and things that happened, but I have to say the Star in its heydays was just a fantastic place to be. You know, I mean, and to do my job, especially before all the corporate concentration, when there was a Bayton Broadcasting, when there was a Standard Broadcasting, right. You know, when you knew who the owners were, the Slates, the Waters, the I would open the Globe and Mail every morning, and there would be the ROB Index of Business, and I would, you know, they would list all the companies they covered that day in boldface kind of thing.
Right.
And I would go, okay, Bayton Broadcasting, you know, I've forgotten all the names now, but I could call up like John Bassett, you know, and have a phone conversation or have lunch with him or get drunk with, you know, like Moses Znaimer. These were actual human beings. So covering media was a lot of fun until this one bought that one and that one bought this one and this one. And I don't have to tell you, like, what's happened to radio in this city. There's very little, you know, playlists that, you know, it's like the last DJ, like Tom Petty, you know, sang in the 90s, I think it was, you know, the last DJ's gone. I mean, I listened to Jazz FM, CBC Radio, and that's pretty much it now. Oh, and Radcan when I listen to radio, because the rest of the radio just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, it's very cookie cutter. There's no creativity, no imagination. And like you said, you know, Bell's got their cluster, Rogers has their cluster, Chorus has their cluster, and then you got your public broadcaster.
Well, I remember when album-oriented rock started, you know, in the late 60s in Montreal with Chaume, and which was then, not Standard, the guy in Newfoundland, I've forgotten. But anyway, so, yeah. And you know, people like Doug Pringle and who knew music and would talk, you know, they would go on and on about T-Rex or Hendrix or whoever. And, you know, you knew the names of everybody who was in Cream and what they played and when they cut this record and how they cut this record and blah, blah, blah. And now, you know, it's like movie stars, right? All these women, they're starting to look alike. It's like they all get the same faces, you know. It's like the Twilight Zone.
Right, right. Fascinating. At some point, in fact, maybe I'll introduce this question right now because you had like the first Toronto Star blog.
Yes. Well, yes, technically I did. David Olive, who still writes a great business column, he did a quote-unquote blog, but he was basically posting his columns online.
Right.
That was really at the beginning of the WWW. But I did the first real blog. And Did you talk to Mark Weisblot about this?
Well, no, but I have okay. It's funny because I got a not from Mark Weisblot. I do talk to Mark Weisblot a lot. Okay, I'll throw that out there, but listeners know that. But this question did not come from Mark. This question came from a gentleman named Cam, and Cam writes, "When did Antonia start talking to bloggers for her scoop, and what other bloggers aside from Mark Weisblot did she connect with in the early 2000s?" Cam's interested in this. I'm interested. I had TorontoMike.com. I've been blogging since 2002. It became a blog, but it was a personal
when I
homepage.
started blogging, I think.
Early days. You had Ramy the Minx. I mean,
Ramy the Minx, and then there was all the war bloggers, right?
But you were there.
Yeah.
And Mark Weisblot, of course, was there. And Mark Weisblot is no stranger. He's in the FOTM Hall of Fame, for goodness sakes. But maybe a little bit about Mark Weisblot. Like, what was your communication like with Mark Weisblot for your blogging meet?
I remember talking to Mark about radio a lot.
Sure.
But most of my communication was with other left-wing bloggers in Canada, people like Canadian Cynic and John Baglow, who did Dog's Blog, and there was a whole Bread and Roses group, which were feminist bloggers. Those were the ones I had time for. I was constantly being slagged by the right-wing conservative bloggers, the war bloggers, as I came to know them. And then they had a blogger fest. And I remember it was a snowy night. I can't remember. It was somewhere on Queen Street. And I decided to crash it. And oh my God, all those boys, they all wanted to take their pictures with me. And I'm like standing there and like doing the cleavage thing. And, and one particular blogger, I think she died. She was horrible. She was like this right-wing horrible woman. She just went, it was disgusting how they all lined up to have their picture taken with them, I had one guy drag me onto a pool table and lie down on a pool table with him. And it was like, those pictures are online somewhere. And so you know what? I didn't take it seriously. And one of the things I learned is I don't care what people say about me. I don't care what people think about me, honestly. I mean, except for the people in my life.
Sure.
But you learn to have rhino skin, as Tom Petty put it. I have rhino skin.
Geez, I'm looking for more Weisblot dirt here. So, like, would Weisblot just send you an email about...
I haven't talked to Mark in like 15 or 20 years, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. I'm only curious because he's always, like, if I have somebody coming on, and not this episode, actually, but he'll often say, hey, get this story. Like, we haven't got this story yet.
What
and
story is that?
Oh no, there isn't one. Like, he didn't actually send me any. He didn't seed any questions for you, actually. But again, the Cam wrote in because, of course,
who's Cam?
Cam.
Who's Cam?
Can I dox Cam?
You?
Okay, Cam Gordon. He's also in the FOTM Hall of Fame. So back when there was a Twitter Canada, he was the director of communications at Twitter Canada. But some guy named Elon Musk decided we don't need a Twitter Canada, let alone a director of communications.
Are you still on Twitter?
I hate that app, but I
looked for you on Twitter, but I couldn't find you.
I'm at Toronto Mike. I didn't delete it because I still use it I copy. What I do is I go on Blue Sky and I send a thing saying, hey, Antonia has made her debut. Here's a link or whatever. And then I copy and paste what I put on Blue Sky and I just drop it into X, but I don't actually read X. I don't read my feed, and I just check my mentions if I'm mentioned, and I'll check my DMs if somebody, like the Radical Reverend kept communicating with me via Twitter DM. And it was like the only reason I had to go in there and check it out. But right. I don't know this kind of ties in nicely because I was a big fan of the blog and the blogosphere, as we called it back in like the mid 2000s.
It was a beast. Okay. It was a beast. I couldn't stop. It's like what I'm like on Facebook now. I couldn't stop. I would be blogging at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m., and once I blogged while drunk, and that was not a good thing because I was talking something to do with porn. And online porn and how online porn really drove the web and blah, blah. And I linked to some really bad porn sites and I go into the Star the next day. And that was like the worst possible thing I could have ever done in a million years is, and I would say, well, the kids are not reading my blog. It's not like you have to get into the blog, see what I blogged at 4 o'clock in the morning while drunk, and and then click on the link to get to the,
And these are the good old days. That's what I say. These are the good old days.
These are the good old days.
Now?
Every day I say these
Every
are the
day.
good old. Well, that's what my boyfriend says. These are the good old days.
Who's this boyfriend?
My boyfriend, whom I met on Facebook, by the way. His name is Roland Doucette. He's a singer and a guitar player. He lives in Gatineau, just across the river from Ottawa. And the connection was that I was a huge fan of Whitehorse, which you should have on. Melissa,
100% I would do that. Yes.
yeah,
of course.
Melissa just finished touring with Blue Rodeo, right? And Luke is his son, and I was a huge fan, and we connected through politics, Roland and I, but then very, very long story short, at some point I made the connection and I went, and yeah, and one thing led to another. And here we are,
And you're happy.
you know what? Do you have wood around here?
I think this is IKEA wood. Does that count?
No.
Swedish wood. Swedish wood, not Norwegian wood, okay?
Yeah. I count myself very fortunate. Very privileged. I have a great life. I've got good health, except every once in a while some back pain. I have family still, not much, but they're gone. I'm comfortable. I'm secure. I'm in a good place, and I live on the border of East York.
And now, I hope you don't have like a dentist appointment.
No,
okay?
I'm fine.
Because I know I'm taking a little time here.
No, I'm fine.
So you just alluded to the fact when you first arrived, you said that you had heard Stafford and that you knew a few things. You knew insider stuff that FOTMs know. Like you knew about the low ceiling. You knew I don't want to chat before we press record. Like I said, this woman knows stuff. So did you listen to more than just the Stafford?
Yeah, I didn't go through a lot of them, especially if they were sports. I'm not big on sports.
No Gretzky talk from you.
Oh, I got Gretzky talk, but that's not sports. Talking about Gretzky, he was on Saturday Night Live hosting. I think it was 1989.
Yes.
And he hosted Saturday Night Live, and of course, all the guys, because they were all guys on the news. Oh, you got to review that. So I'm like, okay, right. So I watched Saturday Night Live, and it was for the Monday papers, so I wrote it on Sunday, and I came in on Monday, and Frank Orr was at my desk again. You have pissed into a Ming vase. And I'm like, he was terrible. Like he was awful. And you know what? As I wrote recently on Facebook, he's pissed in all over Canada as far as I'm concerned. And I think Frank would agree with me.
Yeah, he hasn't yet made any statement of any kind, neither like written or on social media or, verbally. No statement from Wayne Gretzky since this 51st state rhetoric started coming out.
Yeah, well, it's pathetic. He has people talking on his behalf saying, oh, he didn't really mean it. Oh, please.
Well, even Doug Ford was like, leave him alone. I'm like, no, don't tell me who to leave alone.
Yeah, really. Like, you know what? Actions speak louder than words.
Say something.
Yeah. But he's already said it in his actions, right?
Sure,
you can say whatever you want. Like Doug Ford's ripping up the Starlink contract. He's not ripping up the Starlink concert.
Sorry, music on the mind.
It's the cold meds. The contract, Yeah, it's like, and what about that tunnel? Who's building that tunnel, right? Well, guess who owns a big tunneling company? Elon Musk.
Yeah, the boring thing. Yeah. Jeez, if that contract goes to Musk, don't
first of all,
rile me up. Yeah?
Come on, it's never going to happen.
I know that's right. That's right. Well, Ed Keenan comes on once a quarter, and we talk about that. And yeah, this doesn't make sense on any level. This tunnel under the 401.
Yeah, well, neither does the spa at Ontario Place. Neither does destruction of the Ontario sign. None of it makes any sense to me. But
he did just win another majority, third in a row. So are we?
Well, a majority of what? A majority of the people who bothered to vote.
Yeah, but that's the system we have. Like, I know what you're saying. I agree. Except that's the freaking system. Like, so it's the
Are
only
you
majority.
defending him because you
No.
live in Etobicoke?
No, because I am in a riding here. You're sitting in a riding which had prior to last week, had the MPP was from the Progressive Conservative Party, and she lost. Christine Hogarth lost to the Liberal MPP candidate here.
Good.
Lee Clayton. So you're in one of the very few places that flipped from PC to Liberal. So I just want you to know that, Antonia.
Well, that's what happens when, Gen Xers can buy $1 million homes.
This home was not $1 million when I bought it.
No, not when you bought it, but it is now.
It
I'm
is
sure.
now. That is true. Well, that's true. I have nothing I can say about that, but I paid much less than $1 million. Okay, I'm going to give you a few gifts here, and then I'm going to ask you about a couple of controversies, and then we're going to...
Yeah, sure.
You were amazing. Now, and I'm wondering, like, did you have a moment where you wondered if you'd ever walk again? Like, did this ever cross your mind?
Oh, no.
During your injury?
It took me, the first 2 weeks... I'll tell you what I learned.
What?
Diapers aren't as bad as you thought they were.
I said no judgments on the diaper. No judgments from me. If you need
But
diapers,
I had
you need
no
diapers.
choice, right? But no, I could walk which was amazing because every day they would come and stand over my bed and rip up the sheets, which my girlfriends would make. It was so bad. You needed friends to come in and do your bed and help you with things. It was so short-staffed, and that was 2018, and it's much worse now. But anyway, and they would rip off the sheets and then start poking my feet to see, can you feel that? And I would stop, bleep, 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 touching my feet.
Well, that's a good sign. Back, they said that's a good sign.
Yeah, no, but I was worried that I could never drive again, that I could never slice an onion again, that I could never, just this.
All these things you took for granted suddenly ripped from you.
Yeah, and now I can deadlift my weight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with Antonia. Okay.
Don't fuck with Antonia.
You don't need to worry about this place for you're 74. You've got a good 40 years before you got to worry about it. But Ridley Funeral Home.
Oh my goodness.
has sent over a measuring tape for you.
Oh well, thank you. I use it to measure how big my biceps are.
Okay, biceps. I was wondering what you were going to say next. Okay.
Well,
you're measuring the biceps. Okay.
I don't know if this is family program.
No, you can say anything.
Yeah,
you like.
but anyway, yes, I do measure all of that.
All right, I won't ask my next question. I'll skip that and go straight to...
Thank you. I could use this when I go shopping.
Do you like Italian food? I know you're Greek, but what do you think of Italian food?
Una faccia, una razza.
That sounds Italian to me.
That
okay.
means one face, one race. Yes. In fact, I did my DNA thing, and like 30% of me is Italian. So
okay, you're gonna love. But what you say? Well, you're 30. What percent of you is Greek?
About 40%, and then the rest is Balkan. Zerbisias, I believe, means Serbian, and there was a migration of people. It's a long story, but it had to do with the Venetian Empire against the Ottoman Empire and blah, blah, blah. So, and if you meet anybody with the name Zerbini, Zervini, Zervulis, whatever, those Greek, it means they really came from the Balkans.
Okay. Oh, it's fun.
And they're usually fair and not dark.
Well,
okay, is this like a giant
Well, this
pizza?
is an empty box. No, in my freezer upstairs, so before you leave, you'll have it, is a large lasagna, a frozen lasagna from Palma Pasta.
A meat lasagna?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good. I eat meat. I eat protein now.
Okay, good.
I was vegan for years.
Well, okay, because Mike Wilner's coming over next week, and he has specifically requested a vegetarian lasagna. And if you were going to tell me now you're vegan, I would have switched it up and just got him another one.
You know what? When I was in the hospital, I realized that if I didn't eat protein, I would never get out of bed.
This is beef. Okay, it's in my freezer. You're taking it home with you. Thank you, Palma Pasta. They are going to feed us at TMLX 18, which is a free event where all listeners, all guests can collect at Great Lakes Brewery, 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard. This is in South Etobicoke from 6 to 9 p.m. on June 26th. And not only will we eat Palma Pasta, our first beer is on the house. Thank you, Great Lakes Brewery, for that. I don't know if you consume the beer, the craft beer, the fresh craft beer, but this is craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery. Also going home with you, Antonia.
I better put it in the trunk if I have to drive all
Well, just
the
don't
way
crack it
across
open.
back
You're
to
okay.
civilization.
No, don't drink that on your way
Well,
home.
it's not even cold, so no, I won't crack it open.
Well, that's for maybe that pairs
Also,
nicely
I'm
with
on
the
cold meds.
pairs nicely with the lasagna. So you enjoy that. Just want to let everybody know there's a new episode of what are we talking about? Building Toronto Skyline, which is the podcast from Nick Iones from Fusion Corp. The new episode is all about One Young. Pinnacle International is developing One Young.
I know.
Do you know One Young? You ever been?
Yeah, they're tearing. I passed by it today driving here, and I thought, is this the last time I'm going to see One Young before they tear it down?
So that it's a huge, as you know, it's a whole community they're building there, this Pinnacle International. But we talked today to somebody from Pinnacle, and that's one of the big tower is going to be 105 stories.
Can you imagine living up there?
The penthouse, which is going for $30 million, I believe, is 345 meters in the sky, which means you're the same height as the observation deck on the CN Tower.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
I've
have
climbed
30
the
million for
CN
that?
Tower.
Did you?
Yeah, I've climbed the CN Tower.
Well, then you could walk up to your new penthouse at One Young.
I won't do that again.
So everything you wanted to know about One Young is in the latest episode of Building Toronto Skyline. And last but not least, I urge everyone listening to take note of recyclemyelectronics.ca, because if you have old electronics, old cables, old devices, you don't want to throw that in the garbage and have the chemicals end up in our landfill. You want to go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code, and find out where you can drop that off to be properly recycled. Do you have that, Antonia?
You know what? I'm out to buy a new Mac and a new Mac laptop and a new iPad. So no, seriously, I am. My Mac is like groaning and looking at me and going,
software sells hardware. Yeah, they keep upgrading the OS, and then the MacBook becomes too insufficient.
Well, the Mac I have now says, when Spotify comes up, it says your operating system is out of date. I'm getting a lot of that. So.
Yep, and in the olden days, way back when, we might add new memory or a new RAM or a new hard drive or something. Today, you basically get a new one. Like it's a completely. That's why you can't throw this tech in the garbage. There's a lot of dangerous chemicals in there. Okay, so on our way out here, how has this been going for you so far?
This is fun.
I mean, I
know I'm all over the map and I'm talking like I'm stoned.
Listen, I'm all over the map friendly. Like it's all about the tangents and then coming back. But have you been to your Wikipedia page?
Not recently. It would have upset me a lot back in the day, because there were constantly people calling me anti-Semitic on my Wikipedia page, and I just...
And you're not anti-Semitic?
I'm like the least anti-Semitic person on earth.
Where does that come from? Does it come... Because, there is a section on your Wikipedia page called disputes.
Yes, disputes.
Disputes, okay. And it talks a lot about positions you have with regards to the Middle East and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the
I
Iraq
was
war.
right, wasn't I?
Well, can you tell the people, what did you say that was so controversial, and how are you right?
There were a lot of things, when Al Jazeera first started to try to get on the cable dial. And by the way, I ended up working for Al Jazeera after I left the Star. That was a great break. That was such a good gig.
Why did you leave the Star?
Because they were offering, I was 63 and a half, so I was close to... pensioning off. I had enough years to get my pension, and they were offering us a year and a half's pay, and I figured, and then a month later I get Al Jazeera, which was paying me $1,000 US a week for a column. And it was like dirty oil money, but hell, I'll take it.
You can double dip there. Okay.
And it was great working. But anyway, so that's why I left the Star.
Okay.
I also wasn't very happy at that point. There was too much editorial control over, they thought I was too left-wing.
Were you getting memos from management about,
No, they don't work that way. They work in a much sneakier way. But, yeah.
Because
they were getting a lot of pressure from what the editorial board called the organized Jewish community about me because, well, as you say, disputes, right? So I argued for Al Jazeera because Al Jazeera is excellent. And I will keep saying that. And the fact that Netanyahu wants to ban it, and even a lot of Arab countries tried to ban it. Netanyahu bombed it. says a lot about Al Jazeera. Also, there was a dispute with a former justice minister who pretended to be for human rights for everybody except the Palestinians, who gave a speech at an Israeli university in front of a huge poster of Netanyahu to supporters of the Israeli army, boasting about how his daughters were members of or had served in the Israeli army. And I thought, anyway, I tweeted something, and it turned into, I pissed off Alan Dershowitz over Israel. Yes, my older sister, God rest her, she was like a mother to me. She used to say to me, "You got to stop this." I mean, she was very involved with the Jewish community. She was married to a Jewish man. Her daughters were Jewish, and she would say, "You got to stop this. You got to stop this." And I dream of her coming back, and I say to her, "You see, Denny, I was right." I look at what's going on now, and I could have told you this was coming. These were the disputes. They were almost always about my views on Palestinian rights. I'd been there. I'd seen with my own eyes the checkpoints, Hebron, the settlers in Hebron, the settlers walking around with, I don't know what they were, AK-47s or semi-automatic rifles. No, it's not right.
Do you find that in this day and age, if you speak against the country Israel, their policies, that some people may equate that with anti-Semitism?
Oh, they're trying very hard to make it anti-Semitic. They're trying to limit speech. People should not stand for this. Like, why can we say all kinds of things about China and not be called, anti-Asian or racist or whatever? Like, stop it. It's bullshit.
Like Israel is not Judaism. Like, the one is a country with policy.
It is the opposite of Judaism. I grew up surrounded by survivors. All my girlfriends. I went to a high school where there were only 31 Gentiles in a high school of 1,600 Jewish kids. Okay? People think I'm Jewish, like Jewish people think I'm Jewish. I have a friend now, she lives above me. That's how we met. She was my neighbor. She's very, I won't say her ultra-Zionist, but very concerned with Israel. And she thought I was Jewish, So I understand the culture. I spent like 6 weeks there. I feel I know it. And let me put it this way. I found a kitten in a bush while staying with my friends in Jerusalem. And I took it to a vet. And I said to this vet, I will pay for you to keep this cat until you find a home for it. And he said to me he was leaving. And I asked him why. And he said, this was shortly after, Netanyahu had been in power for 2 years maybe. And he said to me, because they're turning right wing and it's not going to be a nice place anymore. There was a shawarma shop in Ben Yehuda Square. I used to often go for lunch. I wandered a lot around by myself. And he was a Moroccan Jew who had gone to New York first, left, came to Israel, and he told me he was closing down his shop and moving back to the States. And I said, why? And he said, because every Friday the religious Jews come at sundown and scream for him to shut down his shop because it's Shabbat. So I could see it coming. And that's when I started to get really radicalized. I wouldn't say radicalized, but to understand the situation and what was happening to Israel. And it had nothing to do with Judaism. Peter Beinart, who's written this fabulous book about being Jewish now in the wake of Gaza, he calls it idolatry. It's the golden idol, which is expressly forbidden in Judaism. you walk into synagogues and you see the Israeli flag. When I used to go to Greek church, which I hated, and I would see the Greek flag, and I would say, no. I mean, I was forced to go, so I would say, what does this religion have to do with the Greeks versus the Turks? So it's not like I'm focusing specially on Israel. It was also the same thing with, Greece. I don't give a damn about what happened 125 or 50 years ago in Greece. It makes no difference to me. Cyprus has nothing to do with me or my religion. I'm not religious, but at the time.
Sure. I appreciate you sharing those thoughts. I have these conversations with Ralph Ben-Mergi.
Oh, Ralph.
I produced this podcast for years.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Not that kind of rabbi. And
I have a lot of time for Ralph.
I have a lot of time. In fact, there's a double date in my calendar. Ralph and his wife and me and my wife are going to an Italian restaurant. So it better be Palma Pasta, right?
Is it Palma?
Would I go anywhere else? Come on. If you see me at any other Italian joint, that's it for me. But Ralph's a great guy to talk to. Ralph, very proud Jewish man. Adherent to the faith, takes time for Shabbat, the dinners and all practice,
and I know
everything.
a lot of,
Very proud Jewish man. Despises Netanyahu and policies of Israel. These are mutually exclusive things.
Yes.
But I have witnessed in my personal life, people equate, if you were to suggest you disagreed with an Israeli policy with regards to Gaza, for example, the Palestine.
How can you not disagree with an Israeli policy towards Gaza? Seriously.
Right. But even some, again, I won't name names, but there's FOTMs on this list. But
I know who they are.
that suggestion, you are anti-Semitic. And furthermore, essentially, we're not friends anymore. Like this nuance is completely lost. And you mentioned, like, why is the flag flying here? The separation of Judaism, this religion, and the policies of the country Israel and Netanyahu, they are two different things. They're mutually exclusive.
Zionism is an ideology. It is a political movement. Judaism, I used to say, and I still say, that when I die, I want a Jewish funeral, right? I have more time for Judaism than I do for being Greek Orthodox or Christian, right? There's something about Judaism that I have, quite apart from the rituals. I have no time for rituals of any kind. But it is not what is going on. There's, like, for example, Maimonides, one of the great Jews, philosophers or whatever you want to call him, he said you should never besiege a city on all sides. Look what they've done to Gaza for decades. And now there's no escape for those people. They can't even go into the water because they'll get shot at from the water. The fisher boats used to go out, and if they went a little too far, they would get shot out of the water.
On the live stream, I just popped over because we were going to wrap. I just want to see what
there's a
questions.
Live stream.
There's a live stream. Yeah, there's just the live stream for the diehard FOTMs that we love from the WhatsApp group.
Hi.
Hey Ref has a question for you.
Hey Ref.
Yeah, he's a referee. He referees hockey games.
Oh, are you a Gretzky fan?
Hey Ref, are you a Gretzky fan? Hey Ref wants to know: do you support Hamas?
No. What a stupid question. No, of course not. Like, why do you have to support Hamas to be pro-Palestinian? That's ridiculous, and it's bullshit, and it's lazy. Do your homework.
Yeah, just reading the questions here, just on our way out here. But there's a contentious issue here. He points out that Israel has free speech. He says there's multiple exclamation marks at the end of that.
Oh, wait, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If Israel has free speech, why has Netanyahu attacked Haaretz, the progressive newspaper? If Israel has free speech, why are they arresting the families of hostages who are protesting in the streets? If Israel has free speech, why did they kick out Al Jazeera? Shall I go on?
All right, I'm going to have to broker a future episode with Hey Ref and Antonia. I got to say here,
I'm going to knock him into the intellectual boards.
He'll give you a charging penalty. Would that be a charging penalty?
A little high
interference?
sticking here. I'm from Montreal, man.
My goodness, your Toronto mic debut was pure fire, and it won't be the last time I get you on this show, but I love this very much.
Thank you. It was fun. And I'm sorry for blowing my nose throughout the whole thing.
You know, I didn't even notice.
Oh my God, I got it
It was quiet blowing going on here. Hey Ref says families aren't being arrested, he says, but obviously we don't have time to solve to make peace in the Middle East in this program, but I love that we can have the open dialogue and have this discussion civilly. And I love this conversation with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to visit, and you're more than just that photo I'd see in the Toronto Star.
Yeah, I'm bigger than a photo.
Larger than life.
Bigger than a bread box.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,646th show. Who's going to be a Liberal leader this time next week? Who's going to win the Liberal leadership race?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, that's like a prediction question.
I think it's like Carney, hands down.
Shoe-in, right? Done deal.
Yeah.
Who, if Mark Carney wins and there's they call a federal election, what do you think happens in the battle between Pierre Poilievre and his Conservative Party and Mark Carney in the Liberal Party of Canada?
Have you ever seen anything more pathetic than Pierre Poilievre the other day following Trudeau's incredible speech that made worldwide headlines? The man is desperate. He has no game left.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,646th show. I had to check the numbers there. It's because I recorded twice today.
Congratulations,
Now, this
Toronto
episode
Mike.
won't actually drop until Saturday morning because Andy Wilson recorded this morning. So we'll see how dated all of our current event chatter will be if people are listening to this on Saturday. But stay tuned for that. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you all Monday when my special guest... Oh, here's a right-winger who worked at the CBC. Bruce Dobigan's in the basement Monday. Bruce Dobigan was like a self-professed leftist who worked at the CBC, who moved to Calgary and became radicalized.
Shame.
Shame on you, Bruce. To be discussed Monday. See you all then.